Yep.
Right, let's move on to this. A comprehensive new study of former football players shows the risk of developing brain disease known as CTE. That's closely linked to the collective force of head hits over an entire career. So that means it's not just the intensity of hits to the head, but also the number when you add it all up. Former Cleveland Browns quarterback Bernie Kosar joining us in a moment to tell us about his personal struggles with brain trauma and CTE. But first, let's bring in Chris Nowinski. He's CEO of the Concussion Legacy Foundation. Want to get your take on this because you're saying that this is happening for people, young people from high school all the way up through the pros.
Yeah, we've wondered for a long time why some people get CT and some don't. We've had a big focus on concussions for the last 15 years, but it turns out it's not concussions that are causing CT. It's the repetitive hits, and it's both the number of them and the strength of them. And that means if we want to prevent CT in current players and the next generation, we need to change how we practice, how we play, and how early kids start getting hit in the head hundreds of times a year.
I want to show everybody here. This is a G-force per hit for high school football players, and you can see, depending on the position that you play, wide receiver, defensive back, defensive line. So these numbers, what does 28.8 mean? Like, what does that feel like? Can you describe?
Yeah, the New York Times did a nice graphic where they showed that's basically like hitting a car accident at 30 miles an hour. So it's not a small hit. I mean, it's something that as a former football player myself, I took thousands of, but they add up over time. But we're also even more concerned about the bigger hits. So one interesting fact about football is that we worry about the concussions, but the concussions often aren't the hardest hits you take. A football player will take maybe 300 or 400 hits harder than a concussion over their career. And so we need to focus not only on the repetition, but also changing the rules on the big hits. That's why actually getting rid of the kickoff, for example, in fall, which we've done now with some high school programs, is probably the right way to go.
And then what other sort of changes have you seen, concrete changes, either in the high school or in the NFL?
Well, yeah, we've made a lot of changes around targeting players that you don't see coming. But I think the biggest change that is going to prevent CT going forward is actually changing when kids start to play tackle football. And so there's actually a bill in the state of New York that would ban youth tackle football participation before 12 and force kids to convert into flag football, because it's very clear that in flag football, you don't get these repetitive hits. The CDC did a study where they found the median number of head impacts for a youth tackle football player is about 378, and the median number of hits to the head for a flag football player is 8. And so we would never expect to see CTE come out of a flag football player. And then, so if you're talking about adding those hits up over a career, my concerning thing having a young son is if you start them young and they're successful, if you start at age 5 playing tackle football, you play through college, I'm not sure if we have negative CT cases with that profile.
Wow,
and so the biggest thing here is that we control who gets CT and who doesn't. And so we need to change how we play football.
Chris Nowinski, appreciate your expertise and your passion for it. We'll stay in touch. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana.
And our next guest has been suffering from traumatic brain issues after 12 seasons in the NFL. Let's bring in Bernie Kosar, former Cleveland Browns quarterback. Bernie, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Bill, Dana, good to be with you today. You know, whether you call it CTE when we're dead or have passed, or TBI, traumatic brain injury, now when we're alive, some of those traumatic brain injuries, fencing, midbrain disorders, it's incredibly tragic, not only what's happening with ex-NFL players, but what you guys are just talking about with Dr. Chris, what's happening with youth and younger people, and not just in the sport of football. This concussion issue, this traumatic brain injury, God, we're seeing it with so much of our military, so much of our youth, that it's such an issue that's mainly because of the effects on myself, something of course near and dear to me right now, and trying to find a alternate outcome other than some of the ways that unfortunately us NFL guys have been passing with this traumatic brain injuries that result in ultimately what Dr. Chris has been researching so much, the CTE.
And Bernie, I was reading that during your NFL career, you estimate you were sacked about 250 times. I would guess that you hit your head quite a bit on some of those sacks. How many concussions do you suspect you had during your playing career, and what were some of the symptoms that you were experiencing as you continued to play?
You know, Bill, I'm proud to be sitting here this morning after almost 40 surgeries, 80 broken bones, 100 plus documented concussions, 15 seizures. If we'd have been attempting to do this interview a half dozen years ago, I was on probably 50 plus pills for 25 plus years, this whole century, trying to figure out a protocol and an options that allow me to have a healthy lifestyle where I'm able to articulate, enunciate, communicate multiple syllable words. It wasn't always like that. And the type of injuries that happen as a result of playing and stuff, heck, I would think as much as technology has changed, as much as we made advancements in society, heck, some of the same doctors that I had in the 1980s and 90s, and I know we didn't know as much back then, but they're some of the same doctors doing some of the same stuff to guys in the NFL today. Heck, the Tua, the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, ended up having a fencing traumatic brain injury during an NFL game on the sidelines of on the field of Thursday Night Football this year. When I saw the doctors there, ended up having the same type doctors. So being able now to try to bring awareness for this for guys like myself to try to come out the other side of it is something like I'm really proud to be seeing what Dr. Chris is doing. And then for guys like yourself, Bill and Dana, to be bringing awareness to this on your show today.
Yeah, Bernie, thank you so much for your insight. And to hear you say you suffered over 100 concussions, that is just a jaw-dropping number. We certainly wish you and your health the best. And thank you so much for coming on this morning to share what you've been experiencing.
God bless you, Bill, Dana. I use the phrase, you matter. We care about you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.